Seven figures for life, people. What's up? Chris Wiser coming to you live today. I am in the beautiful city of Austin, Texas. It is 92 degrees Fahrenheit. We're in the middle of summer. It's like a bake oven here. I'm dying. It's awesome, actually. I really like it. For those of you that don't know me, I am from Wisconsin. Natively, my wife and I moved south to get the hell out of winter. So I'm never going to complain about the heat because in January, I go golfing. That's why I'm here. So anyway, and guys sitting here laughing. So I have with me today an amazing webinar guest. This is Guy Bavly from Actifile. He's the co-founder and CEO over there. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Very good. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to do the webinar with you, Chris. I'm super excited, and
me too.
It's really great.
One of the cool things about our world now and our industry now is we get to work with people all over the world, and we get to work with and do webinars and all this other stuff with people all over the world. Guy, you are in Israel. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, we're in Israel, but most of our customers are in the US, and we do business, all across of the US. And I've been doing business with US customers, throughout my career. It's excellent. And there's a lot of, probably there's a lot of cybersecurity arena in Israel. There's leading companies coming as well, Checkpoint, for instance. So it's a great coexistence between the US and Israel for many, many years in this area.
Yeah, and one of the things that is really key to this, Americans are very used to doing business with American manufacturers, but I want you guys to think about this. Cybersecurity has no boundaries. Cybersecurity has no states. It has no provinces. It has no country borders. It does not care, nor do the hackers on the other side care, nor does the data care. And while those of you, and we got a lot of Americans and Canadians, North Americans watching right now, but while a lot of our privacy things, specifically like in America, HIPAA, in Canada, they have PIPEDA, they have all these Privacy Act, those are regional, potentially even local. I understand. They're definitely national. Cybersecurity and the hacking and the breaches and phishing and all these other things are international issues that, again, see no boundaries. So you guys have to make sure you pay attention to this. On my seven-figure MSP program, actually, I want to take that banner down really quick here. On my seven-figure MSP program, we focus with a security-first approach. So everything that we talk to and touch comes into play with security in mind. And coincidentally, that's also how I met Guy. Actually, one of our clients came in, Guy, and that was Scott Cordell. That was a client of ours, came in and he was working with you already and introduced you to us. And you and I kind of hit it off right away. And one of the reasons that I bring vendors into our program is when I can deal directly with the decision makers, it gives us the power. That's kind of like the power of the hive mind. We have hundreds of people in our elite program, and we can, Guy, you can attest to this. We've sent you a lot of clients in the last couple months here. So it's
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So let's get into the meat of what we want to do today. And for those of you that are out there, I want you to think about this. Most MSPs that we talk to, and my team and I talk to probably 100 to 200, maybe more than that MSPs between, actually it's over 200 MSPs every single month between our clients and prospects. It's over 200 every single month. And one commonality that I see across the board is that most MSPs are not doing network assessments. And the ones that are doing network assessments are doing more of a technological network assessment. When I say that, it is a physical network discovery that's technology focused, more about finding the stuff that's out there, not necessarily a risk focused assessment. Guy, what's your thoughts on that? Do you agree with that? Disagree with that? What do you think?
That's absolutely true, Chris. Many MSPs focus on technology and not on the business side. And business owners, CEOs, managing partners, and so on, look at the risk and the liability. And specifically, private data or privacy-related data. You mentioned many of the regulation and laws, they're international, are of a concern. They're of a concern because of the fines, because of the potential regulation breach. But those are the bare bones of the business. If you don't understand your data, if you don't know which data you have, what types, where does it reside, is it coming in, is it coming out, if you're getting liability, if you're handing over liability, those are the questions that really interest the business owner. And if you can talk that language and you can show them and exemplify what type of data do they have, which vendors or third party they correspond with and exchange data with, then you're top of your game. You can share with them something that they're really interested in.
Yeah. And I will tell all of you that are watching, what's really key about this is when you're doing your network assessment, your traditional network assessment, and I did those for years. I owned an MSP from 2000, roughly 2000 was, I was computer shop from 2000 to 2004, and then MSP from 2005 to 2015. we did hundreds of network assessments, but at no point did we get into looking at what the data was other than the storage on the hard drives. Like that was stuff, and all we really cared about back then, again, this was a little bit before cybersecurity kind of hit, but we never got into the contents of what that data and what that meant to the end user and how that potentially could increase their liability, increase our liability from the MSP side. But the bigger factor, and Guy, we're going to get into like the difference between the data risk assessment and the network assessment in a couple minutes. But what thing I want you all to think about, and this is a very critical juncture that the MSP world is at. You guys probably, those of you that watch me regularly, you hear me say this all the time. We are moving this discussion from over here, which is we're supporting widgets, $4 kind of thing. When I talk about widgets, it's products, little like PCs and servers and backups, those kind of things. And then we're selling them email. We're selling your email accounts, spam prevention, things like that, network monitoring. That is a widget, and that's a commoditized offering. We're moving that away from this into this risk mitigation side, which actually what's interesting is it takes the MSP or the /MSSP that they're turning into and moves them into more the insurance world, kind of. That's the way I look at it. Like we're moving from a product support firm, which is commoditized, which you sell based on price, over to this insurance world, which you sell based on how much data risk you take away. That's the way I look at it. Guy, what do you think about that? Or do you agree with that? Or what's your thought?
Yeah, I fully agree, Chris. That's really the right direction. Every MSP we work with, and we're working with dozens right now, they all see a high volume of risk for each and every customer they work with, and we're working now with hundreds. And the risk is accumulated by different types of private data, whether you're in the health industry or financials, or even government subcontractors that are need to confirm with different, governmental regulations. The amount of data that you accumulate, and the amount of data from different types of private information, it all gathers to the level of risk. And when you're communicating risk, the discussion becomes, let's reduce the risk. And that's the point. You discover the risk, you monitor the risk on a regular basis, then you can have a discussion on a monthly or quarterly basis when you do the QBR, and eventually you can talk about ways to reduce the risk. Now, when you're reducing the risk, you can operate different regions, but you need to do the risk mitigation, and you need to track the risk mitigation. So
well, and you think about all of you, I agree. And you think about everybody that's on this call, that's watching it live with us right now or watching the recording, think about your current network assessment. What are you doing? Are you even having a risk discussion? Most aren't. I'm telling you, and be honest with yourself. Almost everything is technically focused. And Guy said this right in his open. He said specifically, this is no longer a technical issue. This is a business issue. That data and that intellectual property or the records that they have, that is a risk factor that not only could be breached and stolen or breached and leaked. And the leaks come into play. That's like local fines. You just lost me for a second. I'm back though.
Yeah.
Like something just zapped. I don't know. It's weird. So anyway, what I was saying, what's the last thing you heard really quick?
That you're going from technology to business, you're monitoring the situation. I would like to add to that, Chris, that eventually, and we're seeing it across all our MSP customers. You're right. When you're focusing on technology, it's think about it. You have a jewelry shop, okay, and you talked about insurance. So let's think about insurance for a jewelry shop. You have all kinds of jewels and diamonds and so on. Eventually, if you put an alarm on the door or a super good lock on the window, something like that, and you discover that as part of your technology assessment, you have no clue what type of diamonds, jewels, or any precious, belongings you've got inside your shop. When you're an MSP and you're checking the door and the window, all you do is just check the perimeter and, just say, okay, I have the right technology in place. But you never get to see what's in the safe, and maybe the jewels are outside the safe, and maybe the jewels are in a cupboard or in a drawer, not secured at all. So think about it from a different angle. What really matters is not how you put the different firewalls and antiviruses in place. Those are important. But what's important is what type of data do you have? Where is it stored? Who is actually giving you or taking from you data? And when you're doing that, you're actually corresponding to the need to discover the risk. And this is the risk, compared to a jewelry shop or something like that, that have precious artifacts, so to speak.
And, one of the things that's also important to think about is depending on the type of prospect or client that you're working with, that risk varies. I used an example on our coaching call yesterday that if you walked into like a local Subway sandwich shop, that's a franchise model, they're keeping almost nothing. The only thing that they do on hand, they don't keep any customer records. They probably don't even keep any employee records. All they do is have swiped credit cards, and it's a hosted credit card environment that they probably track zero. So look at the risk for them. And I know that's not an ideal MSP client. I'm just giving you guys an example on that. Look at the risk difference for them versus a large CPA or accounting firm. The risk is insane there, and they have to follow regulations, and they have to follow all these actual compliance things along with medical. There's legal, there's wealth management. And so that's a very, very good point, and it's very, very key. But what you guys should be looking at through all of your network assessments is making sure that you add that data risk assessment piece to it. And if you're not doing that, think of all the jewelry that could be left sitting out on the table or in the drawers like Guy's talking about. So let's get down to a couple quick questions here that I have. And those of you that are watching with us, if you guys have questions, I'm watching the chat here live on our dashboard. Please feel free to comment, and we will ask these things live. If you're also commenting after on the replay, please comment and we will answer. Guy will be monitoring this along with our team, and his team will be monitoring this. But so we talked earlier about how MSPs are doing network assessments, and that's your technical discovery and maybe some questions, but it's all from the technical side. How is it really different? I don't want to get too in the weeds because we only have 30 minutes ish on this call. I don't want to get too in the weeds on this, but how is it really different from network assessment to data risk assessment? You talked a little bit about it, but anything else that you want to cover?
Yeah. So basically you working with a pre-templatized environment where you have all the definition of the different private or privacy-related information. We call it, and you're probably familiar with that, PII, personal identified information, like social security number, medical records, driving license, and so on. Each and every record like that has its own unique value that we calculate according to several factors. It could be how much it's worth in the dark web. It could be how much the big accounting firm, assess that. Medical records, for instance, go for $400 per record. A credit card for $50 or $100 per record, and so on and so on. So very quickly, when you do the assessment, first of all, you look at what's already stored across your network, and you multiply the number of records by how much each and every record like that is worth, and you very easily get to a total number that exemplify. And usually, by the way, Chris, it's in the range of millions of dollars for a typical customer of MSP, and from different, verticals. And the second thing,
hey, really quick on that. Chris? Just thinking about this, and one of the things, guys mentioning the millions of dollar range. One of the things that we do, just so you guys know this that are watching inside of our program, is we look at multiple different data value calculators. And the challenge is the value of the data is really kind of arbitrary. Like, we don't know what that value of the data is. So you have to be the one that bridges that gap to your client. If you're just counting on, and Guy, this is nothing bad about your product or anybody else's calculator, but realistically, nobody really knows what the data is worth until there's a breach. So you just have to make sure the client understands what that risk level is. They have to understand that those things all exist. Then you have a lot of variables that come into play. And I'll give you a great example of this. I know of a plastic surgeon that had all their patient records on it on a camera. They actually had a camera. They had a bunch of patient records on it, and they lost. And it was more that they had the patient number and they would have to take a picture of the patient, and they would put the patient number on the picture, and they lost the camera. Now, nothing ever bad came from that. I just know that this happened, but here's a great example. That is technically a breach. they never reported it. They never reported anything. They've never had anything come out of it. But according to state law, that should have been probably reported. So the client needs to understand what the law is in the state in those scenarios, because if they don't report that stuff, they could. And they think, a lot of people think that they can just get away with it on occasion. Like, oh, this happened, I'm not worried about it, I'll just put it in my back pocket. But what the hackers are starting to do is they're starting to say, hey, we hacked your data, pay us. And it used to be pay us or we won't unlock your data. Now it's pay us and we won't unlock your data, and we won't also release it to the public. Oh, by the way, we also will call all the clients that have all the patient data in it. And oh, by the way, we'll also call all the local and federal authorities. So you have to make sure your client understands, as the hackers get more advanced, all those state laws, all those things apply. And that all comes down to making sure that there's risk calculated and part of that. So just be careful on the number. Like I just heard you mention that millions of dollars number. Be very careful with that, because you show them a $3 million value to a 7-person CPA shop, they're going to be like, okay, fine, I'll just shut down. But that doesn't mean that they're not liable. So you have to make sure they understand the difference between just a arbitrary number made by a calculator and the real risk. That's kind of long-winded, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I fully agree, Chris. And the right thing to do is to have a conversation. Sit down with the business owner. This is a great opportunity for you, I think, to excel and to go beyond the typical network assessment. Showing the breakdown. Maybe some of what we consider risky for them is not so risky. Maybe they care about social security numbers and don't care about credit card. So we give you the breakdown. But that's only the first part. The second part is that everything is dynamic. It's not just what we call at rest, static. Every business gets information, gets data, and hand over data. And the important thing, Chris, is when you're receiving data, you're becoming liable. You're responsible for that data. So even if the data originally is not yours, it's the government, it's your third party, it's a payment processor. When they hand over data to you, you become liable. And you hand over back to them, which are trusted, a partner of you, that's perfectly fine. But if it finds its way to shadow IT, those, personal backups or places where people do their business, your own private business, that's wrong. So the second thing we give is a view of what's going in and what's going out, like an accounting system. And that's something dynamic, which is good. Again, you can go back to your customer, your business owner, and share with them where the current situation is, not just how it used to be a month ago, but what changed. The risk goes up, the risk goes down. Yeah. You're working with a new vendor, everything is dynamic.
Yeah. So a key thing that I heard there, I like to lay things out in layman's terms for everybody. First of all, your product is really, and note for everyone, we use this product internally and we supply it to our internal inner circle coaching clients, just so you guys know that. Full disclosure. Second thing, your product is not only great for data risk assessments, but you have a part of that is a resident module that runs on machines network wide, and it does monitoring for new risk data, which my suggestion that you guys do, I suggest this to my clients exactly the same. You don't charge separately for this. You bundle it in, and it's a value add that becomes part of the value that you add at your regular business reviews. Do you agree with that? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think that the way to sell the services, and I think your guidance over here is very important, Chris, is you actually sell the service around the product. So you go and, do a weekly or monthly review. You send them, updated reports. You show them another view of the system is risky devices. Some devices correspond, get data and hand over data externally on an ongoing basis. Those people, I'm not saying they're malicious by intent, but let's look and drill down what they're doing. And I can actually see if they're moving data through WhatsApp web. At one point of time, one of our customers, showed data going through Twitter. And the MSP talked with the business owner, and he said, that's okay. That's one of my employees moving information, home to make it easy for him to work after hours on the data. Yeah. So it's another view of the system that you can actually talk, because new people are added, new businesses are added. So it's a dynamic environment.
Well, it's constantly changing and evolving, which gives you, and I will tell you guys from my standpoint, and we look at everything QBR should be a sales piece. It should not be just handed over to your technical people. You should be running your business reviews, whether they're quarterly, monthly, weekly. I don't care how often you're doing them. They should be no less than quarterly, for the record. But those should not be just handed over to your tech. Those should be strategic in nature. Their decision makers plus your decision makers, and your active account management or sales team should be doing them. But think about how important this is. The more data that's changed, the more opportunity you have to talk to the client, which means more communication, which means more value. That's really, really important. Super easy to do now. If you think about it, traditionally, we were almost forced by the clients to do all this stuff in person. Now, always opportunity in disaster. COVID has brought this whole thing in where we can push all this to a Zoom meeting and do quarterly business reviews on a Zoom call and hammer 6 out in 3 hours. Like, it's not that hard to do anymore. You just have to be smart and logistically plan. So, okay, a couple other things. I want to keep this focused on the assessment. We do have some questions coming in. We're going to get to those at the bottom of the hour here, just so you guys know. I want to go through the assessment stuff here, and then we'll cover that. So if you guys have questions specifically about, I know there's one about your encryption piece. We'll come to that. There's another one about how you stack up against other tools in the market. We'll come to that. A couple things on the assessment side. So obviously we're doing this for a risk mitigation assessment. How long does a typical assessment take? Are there built-in reports? What does that look like on your side?
Yeah. So there are two types of time periods. So the static information, what lies at rest, is done through a 1 or 2 hours time frame. What's important is that we add 2 to 3 business days, and that's why, because we want to see the users, as I said earlier, receiving information and handing over information. So you don't see that in 2 hours. You actually want to accumulate enough data points to show the activity of what we call in motion, so to speak. So a typical assessment will take anytime between 2 to 4 business days. At the end of this period, you've got built-in reports that shows the level of risk. It cuts it down by types of PAI, shows what's coming in and coming out, device risk. We also have a very important feature called activity log. You can always go back into a week, let's say 3 months ago, and if there is a suspicious breach or there is a requirement for an audit, you can actually see what happened during that week or any time period. So that's actually awesome, because if there is a breach or if there is an audit, you can limit the scope of the liability. Because every auditor that will come, and you have no tool like Actifile, will say, okay, I should assume everything, all the jewels, so to speak, were gone. With Actifile, you can actually show that only some of the jewels or non-jewels were actually lost, stolen, and misplaced. All of the reports can be exported through PDF or Excel, and you can actually customize them and hand it over through those weekly, monthly, quarterly QBRs that you mentioned earlier, Chris.
Yeah, I like that. Again, I recommend this product to all of our clients. We offer it internally. I love it a lot. And what's also interesting, Guy, this isn't something that you guys talk about, but we have had, I don't even know if you know this actually, but we've had a lot of our clients that are non-technical using your product to do the assessments. So instead of you having to be you as the MSP having to rely on a technical person to run this assessment, it's being run by some of our salespeople, and it's just a static program that runs, and it's pretty simple, and it really, really works. Just talked to a gentleman in Australia this morning, and he had installed your product and absolutely loves it. Just to give you an idea, it's actually his tomorrow is later tonight, but it gives you an idea of what that is. The simplicity of it and allowing the sales team, or potentially, when I had my MSP, I had a sales team, but I had multiple salespeople, but then I had I had a sales coordinator. She was the one that ran all that. She could be even the person that's running this kind of stuff. So not having to have critical IT resources. Now, granted, you want to obviously have IT touch on it and, tech touch on it. But the thing that I've seen is the tech side gets paralysis by analysis really quickly. And the goal on sales is to push, go. So, okay. So I think I like that a lot. Those are good answers there. Again, if you guys have questions that are watching for Guy, we're going to come to them in the next few minutes here and we'll answer them for you. And honestly, we'll be here until we're done answering questions. We got like 10 minutes of content yet, and we'll answer questions as we go. And then Guy's got nothing to do, right? It's like, you got nothing.
Nothing.
I know. So he's here with us until we're done is the point. So until I release you, you're here. Okay. So what about regulations and compliance and those kind of things? Like here in the States, we got HIPAA, they got PIPEDA in Canada. What does that look like? And I think it's way more about the record type than it is necessarily about the specific compliance, but talk about that a little bit and what your product does.
So first of all, we cover all regulations and all types of PII, personal identifiable information. We cover all of them. We cover CCPA, we cover HIPAA. There's actually a very interesting upcoming, regulation that, heavily implies additional auditing for government subcontractors. That's CMMC level 3, that is part of NIST 800-171. And that's a very important one because it entitles every subcontractor, and many organizations are subcontractors of a bigger organization.
Yeah.
Let's McDonnell Douglas, and McDonnell Douglas has in its supply chain thousands or tens of thousands of small businesses that MSPs serve. And each and every one of them, now it's not longer a business of fee or audit, it's going out of business. If you don't comply, you cannot work with your partners, your big partners, so to speak. And there's a need for classification that goes beyond PII. It's called CUI. It's the classified information that is not top secret. I'm not talking about top secret, but actually very, very simple. If I'm producing a light bulb for the F-16, okay, and I get the manufacturing, schemas from McDonnell Douglas, and I'm subcontracting, then that information handed over from the defense, from the Department of Defense, that's classified and needs to be protected like any type of PII. So there's a big opportunity. The regulation is coming up in September, it kicks in, and there's a lot of buzz among the 150 or even 200,000 small businesses in the US around this type of regulation. I don't think many people know it, so it's a call for action. If you've got subcontractors that are working as part of the supply chain, eventually for the government in the US, that's a great opportunity for you.
I actually think, really quick on this, I actually think what's going to happen with that is you're going to start seeing things with intellectual property becoming that. And one of the things that we actually have a new thing that we're going to be releasing for the public MSP crowd, which is our data risk assessment checklist. We're going to be releasing. It's just something that we have to go through all the steps that you got to check to kind of do that, that we've been making this on our side. But one of the things that we have is that you have to go through and determine what intellectual property the client has, or potentially they have from someone else's too. Because it's not just, your case in that scenario. And I know my Tiffany is watching right now. Tiffany, put that on the list because we don't have somebody else's intellectual property. You just brought that up as a very good point because it's not something that most businesses would consider PII. But I'll tell you what, you lose that light bulb plans under a breach. You got some big problems because not only do you have to deal with McDonnell Douglas, but you have to deal with the Department of Defense, which those are definitely things that you have to put in play. But think about now let's tweak that a little bit. Don't think about the power of showing that to a prospect and the level of discussion that creates versus we're supporting your computers, bud. Like that's a major difference in how you're selling. And you see where I'm taking it from. And this is what we do inside of our program. Again, we take it from that widget discussion and we're supporting widgets in gear and tech to we are reducing or helping to reduce or helping you mitigate the risk that you actually have on your network. And almost none of your competitors are doing this right now. This is a major advantage. Thoughts on that, guy? You agree?
Yeah, I agree. We see MSPs. Actually, we got already feedback from MSPs that this helped them. Close deals, close, new recurring revenues. And just to go back to your previous comments, Chris, it's some of the customers that are, customers MSPs serve have also global needs. So if you're a US, customer, but you have Canadian, regulation, so you have Canadian customers, you have to comply with that. If you're working with Europe, you have to comply with the famous GDPR. And if there are any, international MSPs on the line, like the one that you mentioned from Australia, we're configured to help each and every country in the world. It doesn't limit ourselves to just North America. So the system is easily configured. We are adding more and more types of PII as we go along, And we have customers, all over the world right now. So it's very easy. And if you have your own specific type of, sensitive or IP-related information, we can always define that in the system and help you, discover the data that your customers are worried about.
Yeah. Okay, a couple quick things that just made me think about this. One thing I want you guys to also think about, I've definitely seen this. A lot of our vendors that we partner with are international. I've seen, and this is nothing against the American vendors, but the bottom line is the international vendors are ready to work with the rest of the world and America. American vendors are ready to work with America, and then they think about the rest of the world. It's just kind of, it's just the way it is, honestly. It's just very clear to me. But from a you guys sitting out there as the MSP standpoint, that's a major advantage for you working with a company like Actifile. The other thing that I like, Guy, you are an available CEO. Like I can pick, like Guy and I talk almost every day because we're putting stuff in place and we're tweaking things and we're changing. But my clients have sent, I think, 3 or 4 bug fixes back to you guys. They weren't really bug fixes, but they were improvements back to you guys. And you guys whipped it around in 24 to 48 to 72 hours and made those changes. That was a huge thing for me. We actually talked about this on the coaching call yesterday. David, the David I'm talking about, he sent in that change that you guys did, and he was like blown away that you changed that stuff in 48 hours. So that was huge. And I think that's a huge proponent for me, just so you guys know that that's from me to you. Okay, a couple other quick things, and then if you guys have questions that you want to go through, feel free. We'll hit all this stuff. Okay. This one I know was a question we had ahead of time. Can I just assess the data risk or also reduce the risk and liability? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, Chris, we have 2 levels in our product. The basic level is the assessment. Okay. We do risk assessment. You discover the risk, you monitor the risk, and you can have all kind of reports and audit log, activity logs, explorers, different types of explorers to slice and dice the information. One more advanced capability of the system is reducing the risk. We reduce the risk by a built-in capability called transparent encryption. That's one of the ways to actually reduce the risk. That's an easy way because it's safe harbor almost immediately. It's safe harbor. It's a built-in capability within the system, but it's not the only option. You can reduce the risk by identifying the files and move them to a secure place. You can actually delete them. But the best way, the most easiest way, and the safe harbor way is to encrypt them, and that's a built-in capability within the system.
Yeah, I think, let's talk about safe harbor a little bit, just so you guys understand what that is. I actually brought this up on our coaching call yesterday. I know I keep mentioning that, but I talk about you guys a lot. Specifically, I talk about you because I like you. But but one of the things that I've noticed by looking at and we, as part of our system, look at the individual. I don't look at a lot of international law, but I look at a lot of state laws here in the United States, and I see how different they are. One thing that is overwhelmingly clear about all of them is all penalties apply unless all the data is encrypted. And that's basically the safe harbor thing that you're talking about. Now, here's what I'll tell you guys, make sure you're providing encryption and putting this as part of the play. But I wouldn't necessarily tell your clients that because then they think they got a get out of jail free card. I think that's a thing. But for you guys, from a liability standpoint, if all that data is encrypted, what I've seen across the board with the laws is it says you're liable for all this. If data is encrypted, none of this applies. All the laws literally say that written. And that's the safe harbor you're talking about. Am I correct?
Exactly.
So let's talk. And we got a bunch of questions here. We actually just had one come in here from David Rose that just said, hey, can you speak about the encryption option? Can you talk about that with me? So we're going to get away from the assessment stuff a little bit. This is actually the delivering regular services part of this. So I know we're going to get away from the assessment stuff. I think you guys can understand how important the data risk mitigation side is. And that's what we're talking, that's the easy part. We'll go through a little demo in a little bit here when we're done, but let's talk again about what is the encryption option that you have. You have your monitoring and assessment side.
Exactly.
Then you have the upgrade to that, which is your encryption option. Talk about that for us a little bit.
That's a more advanced capability or a level of capability in the system, but it's absolutely tied back to the assessment. So when you see the assessment, you see the different types of PII, you see the sources of the PII and the destinations, you can actually encrypt immediately from there. So if I'm looking at, social security number and I want to encrypt only the social security number files, I can do that directly from within the discovery. So it's tied back to the discovery. I finish the discovery, I do the monitoring, and if I want to protect and actually activate the encryption option, I do it from within the point where I see the different types of PI. I'll show that in the demo in a minute. And the encryption option is neat because it's what we call transparent encryption. The users don't need to know that something was encrypted. They double-click the file, it opens, there's no password or anything like that. And you can even, remove the encryption once the data is moved into a trusted third party when it goes out. I'll show that in a demo in a minute, I think, Chris. That will be easier, I think, to
yeah, I think it'd be easier to explain. And I just, I wanted to bring it up for everyone here because obviously we got some question about it. We got another person that just asked about the encryption option, file-based key storage, performance hit, etc. So we could talk about that in a little bit. If anybody else has any other questions, one thing I do also want to bring up, this is from Eric Pinto. He's a good buddy of mine, also a channel vendor. He actually works for a security operations center firm called Soxoder. But he just said here, 100% spot on about intellectual property. So Eric's in the trenches as a part of this. And Guy, I don't know if you guys know Eric at all, you should connect with him. He's a good dude. But his statement that he just said there, that the liability of your client's data is pretty obvious, but it's rarely factored in. And the other thing I'll say, Eric, along with what you just stated there, it's rarely factored in that the data value at all is even a piece of it. Like that stuff is something that MSPs almost like, I'm not joking. And Eric, you probably see this, but for those of you that are MSPs that are watching this, I'm not joking. Over 90% of MSPs are not doing any type of data risk mitigation assessments at all. They literally look at the infrastructure. That's it. And maybe the software side, but it's only in terms of what they have to support and how they're going to support it. They don't look at what potential data is there in terms of a risk scenario. So that's a major, major factor. So, okay. Couple other questions here. This one just came in here. I can't see who this is, but obviously it's from Facebook user, that just means they didn't allow the profile to be active on the StreamYard side. What is the difference between this encryption option and say BitLocker?
Yeah, BitLocker is a full disk encryption, and that's it. It has its own value. They're not contradicting, but actually complementing each other. Disk level encryption, when you open up Windows, everything is open to you. So if someone, leaks or unintentionally, moves data away from that computer, nothing is protected. With Actifile, it's a standard AES-256 encryption algorithm. When the files keep on being encrypted even when they move away from that computer. So they are protected. And if you are operating to reach what Chris discussed earlier is a safe harbor, you need that file level encryption in order to be completely protected.
So clarify this for non-technical people that are there. BitLocker is a disk level encryption, more for if laptop is stolen and they want to try and take the drive out and access the data, then they can't get it. But if they have real-time access to the machine and the file's not encrypted at the file level, they're still going to get a file that's not encrypted. Is that right, guys?
Exactly. And again, if the user does something with the data, let's say the user doesn't, it's not a malicious user. He just took the data and put it in the wrong, destination, put it in his, personal OneDrive, okay? That means that the BitLocker is not aware of that and doesn't care about it. But if the file is encrypted, then outside the realm of Actifile, where there is an agent where we're operating, that won't happen, of course.
Yeah. So major differences. And I think, that actually brings up a very good point about the safe harbor discussion, because I think a lot of people would potentially fall back on I had BitLocker on all the laptops, I'm safe. That's a completely different discussion. And yes, you should have that done, but that doesn't mean you have safe harbor because the data is not encrypted at the file level. So you have to be very careful with these things. And here's the other thing that you have to make sure: your clients need to be educated on this. Like we as technical people, almost everybody in the technical side, MSP, all the way up to your highest level cybersecurity people, we know all this stuff. You have to convey this in a way that flicks the light bulb on for your client. Like they have to understand, they have to get it. They have to realize that they have real risk and that their company will not run if their data is gone. Like think about this. If we take all the data off of any company in the world and we just pick up that data and walk away with it, their network could be perfectly fine. You did your job monitoring, but the data is gone. It was stolen by hackers. They will be out of business. That's what matters. Like the data. So we're past the point where the infrastructure matters, but yet you guys as MSPs are still selling and supporting everything based on the infrastructure. And I'm not yelling at you. It's just something that if you want to get the maximum dollar from your client, you have to pick up and evolve how you're selling. And talking about being a risk mitigation firm and a risk mitigation expert, that's a different animal. It's a completely different animal. So, okay. A couple more things here. So David also just said, here we go. That statement clarified my next question. File is accessible while on system host while active file is running. If copied off, not accessible and encrypted, correct. Is that right? I believe that he's right. Yep. Okay. Correct. Yeah. So that's a big factor. Now, none of this really. Now, what about like a real-time breach with password? I mean, I don't think if they have, let me just ask you this, and it's just me asking along that question. So if let's say somebody hacks into my machine right now and has access to my full Windows dashboard and I'm running ActiveFile, they can't just copy off the file and have it. It's still going to be encrypted. Am I right on understanding that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes some sense. So David, thanks for that question. Here's another one from Matthew Taylor. Does ActiveFile do any assessments towards cloud, Azure, AWS, Office 365? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's if I understand correctly, let me clarify. Do we do assessment within AWS, within Azure, within Office 365? So first of all, yes, that's on our roadmap towards the end of the year to include that in our risk assessment. But I'm just highlighting that that's a little bit, looking under the lamp. Why? Because when you're looking in those repositories are managed, they are well secured, all of them. Okay, and you have built-in tools to actually query and see the different types of PII. So the cloud itself is quite secure, managed from a privacy perspective. What people don't usually do is that they are not aware that data is coming out from those repositories all the time. Your users are working. They operate under different business conditions. They do payment processing. They do patient care. They take data out of the cloud, and the data moves in between those cloud repositories. This is where your most risk is. This is what I call emotion. At the end of the day, when it gets out from Office 365 and move through the endpoint to a different repository, whether it should be or shouldn't be, according to your business guidelines, to your customer's business guideline, this is the blind spot. So yes, we're going to add those risk assessments towards the end of the year, but keep in mind that those are easily done through different tools today. What we're providing right now is actually looking not under the lamp, but somewhere else.
Yeah. Another thing I want you guys to think about while we're talking about all this stuff. I've just seen this. I was an MSP, as we talked about. Almost every MSP wants a set it and forget it tool for this stuff. And Guy can attest to this. He just said this. They don't do everything. They don't do everything under the sun. There's other tools that can help you. You should be having a solution suite, because there's no one tool that's going to cover all of these things, right? It's tough. Like you want multiple things that are doing it, and multiple solutions covered. And Guy, we pair you guys with Breach Secure Now internally. You don't do fake phishing, you don't do dark web scanning, you don't do some of these other things. So our clients use ActiveFile along with Breach Secure Now, and it's a great marriage. Like it works really, really well together. And I wouldn't even want ActiveFile to do all those things, because then you start to get into this. We are a jack of all trades, master of none. Like you guys are really good at what you do, and I really like it, and I love our relationship. It's really blossomed. It's matured great in the last 3 to 6 months here. But you're really good at what you do, and I don't want you to expand, because all of a sudden you start to expand and you become a jack of all trades, master of none, like I said. So,
by the way, an important note to mention, Chris, we focus only on MSPs. We don't do anything else, just MSPs. We sell only to MSPs. We solve MSPs problems. Our portal built towards MSPs. It's a multi-tenant portal. You can manage all your customers within one pane of glass. Excuse me. So
glass of pane, is that a new thing? Or?
Yeah. It's like 10 p.m. already, Chris.
Come on. Have another beer. Come on, buddy. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm going to drink a beer in a minute. Yeah.
Attaboy. Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, well, you don't know Guy. Most of you don't know Guy. He was a little nervous coming into today, but you're doing great, buddy. I love it. It's good discussion.
Thank you.
Really good comment here from Jerry Morgan. It's a great point that it's a risk management focus. I think it's a really, really big key. You think about some of your biggest consulting firms that are on the planet. They are risk management firms. That's what they do. They don't do anything but risk management for major corporations, for public billion-dollar corporations, and they are themselves then billion-dollar corporations. It is a luxury product, and it's very hard to put a singular ROI. Here's a great example. I live in Austin, Texas. I have hurricane insurance. Okay. What's the ROI on hurricane insurance? Nothing until when I have a hurricane hit me. That's the same exact scenario. That's the mindset that we have to start getting into, of being risk mitigation experts, period. So, okay. Couple other questions. This one is about a competitor I want you to bring up here. This came from Facebook user. See that you do data risk assessments. I'm wondering how it compares to rapid fire tools assessments, which also has risk scores. I don't know the answer to that question, so you can answer that for me.
Yeah, rapid fire does a static review of the data, pretty much like ITFL does, but we have, I think, the capability where it tracks data in motion, in and out. And again, if you look only on the static information that you've got across your different repositories, that's too little and very limiting. The second thing, which is far more important, you can upscale your solution, not from the risk assessment. You can go, like we said earlier, into the risk mitigation. And ActiFile has a built-in tool, like we talked about earlier, to do the risk mitigation in place on top of the risk assessment. So that's another big factor. So to summarize, in motion and risk reduction tools. I think those are the two big differences.
I think that's probably the best answer to. That's a really good answer to that. Actually, I like that as well. Okay, we don't have any other live questions right now. Did you want to show a little demo of the product?
Yeah,
we got 12 minutes to the top of the hour. I can have you do that really quick here.
Can you see my screen, everyone?
Sure. Yes, sir. We can. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So this is our partner portal, and using the partner portal, you can very easily go into different types of customers. I'm using one of my example customers. So this is the risk portal. This is how you as an MSP will see each and every of your customers. You can see here very quickly how many devices are installed, how much risk. We talked about it earlier, Chris. It's an assessment of the risk. It's a number you can have a discussion around. You can actually start drilling down, but it's a starting point for a good QBR overview. You can see the total risk, and you can see here the risk reduction. Once we start, reducing risk, in place over here, everything will be reflected. So some of the MSPs that we work with already saw a reduction on average of 80 or 90% on average. Now, on the right, you can see different types of reports that help you assess the risk. So the data risk, which is a report that is actually slicing and dicing different types of sensitive information. And it's a multinational environment over here. So you can see ICDC code, which is a US healthcare related type of PII. You can see here a credit card like MasterCard. You can see Visa. You can see even Singapore, NRIC, which is the equivalent to SSNs, et cetera, et cetera. For each and every classification, if different type of private information, in private data, you can see how many files, you can see the number of records, and you can, and this is what I showed earlier, you can actually go from here and immediately encrypt from here. And you just press encrypt. Everything that is created already or will be created is captured and immediately encrypted transparently in the background. Another view of the system is the application risk. Now, the application risk shows the different types of what we call sources and destinations, where the data is coming from or going to. So again, this is a demo system. You can see here, for instance, Cerner and McKesson. Both of them are healthcare providers or healthcare processing providers. McKesson does a lot of payment for healthcare providers. And
they also do full software, like McKesson does, and Cerner actually, both of them do full actual practice management solutions.
Exactly. So it could be also an application. So over here, we can see web portals. We can see different types of applications like Pipedrive, a CRM application, different utilities like WhatsApp Web. For all of them, you can see how many files came in, how many files went out, and how much risk there is in US dollars. So it's a different slice and dice of the system. And that's a very interesting discussion with the business owner, because on a different level of risk mitigation, what exactly are we doing with WhatsApp Web? Are we working with Cerner? So sometimes the business owners understand their business flows and reflect on what they're doing by just watching this report that we had over here. And again, if you want to go to the next level in Encrypt, you just hit Encrypt from here, same thing, and everything coming out that specific system, Cerner, McKinsey, or anything else, once downloaded, extracted, it hits your user endpoint, immediately it's protected, it's encrypted and protected. Device risk is again very interesting discussion that you can do with your business owner or counterparts. Each and every device has its own risk level calculated by the number of files going in, out, risky data that they have on their machines, etc., etc. For instance, over here, you can very easily start justifying all types of tools and equipment that you put in place to protect each and every device. And we can drill down. And by the way, we're only tracking sensitive data. We're not tracking, we're not intrusive, we're not looking at any browser history or anything else, just the data. We're focused, we're data only. So you can see all type of classifications over here, and you can see the outbound cloud services that are giving you information. Inbound, you can actually drill down and understand what the users are doing, and you can actually find out if there's someone that you're potentially looking at, someone that might doing something wrong or potentially by mistake. You can actually browse that from here. And the last thing I'm going to show is the activity log. The activity log is a way for you to slice and dice. I talked about it earlier. You have a suspicious breach or an auditor comes and say, hey, let's look at a specific time frame in the past. You can choose the time frame from here. You can use that to select range of devices, and you can actually pull a list of file operations, upload, download to specific target or sources, and you've got a full audit log of what happened. So eventually you can even track and monitor things that happened in the past. That's a quick overview, Chris, of the system, just to exemplify what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I actually, for those of you that are watching, I absolutely love the product, and Guy's easy to work with, and you guys have a really good offer, and you really have a great 14-day trial as well. For those of you that are watching again with us, both live and recording, we have, if you go to the browser, go to your browser, look at the URL that's in the bottom, actifile.com/7figure MSP. You can sign up for a 14-day trial right there. There is onboarding that comes with that trial. Am I correct, Guy? Just so we're comfortable on that.
Yeah. There's a 14 days free trial for each and every one, of course. And there's an onboarding session that we're happy to give everyone. And we're, as Chris said, we love to work with customers. We love to work with MSPs, and we are happy to train you, to onboard you, to continue working with you and show the system, help you with creating reports, give you tips about regulations that are coming up. So, happy to answer all your questions when they come up.
Yeah. And I will personally say these guys are easy to work with, and they work well with us. So it's been an awesome scenario. Guy, thanks so much for being with us today. We don't have any other questions, so I'm going to go ahead. If there's anything that you guys else want to have, we're at the top of the hour. So please leave that in the chat window here. Comment just on this post. And guys watching, my team is also watching, and we'll make sure you get in touch. You can also, as we talked about it, go to actifile.com/7figure MSP and work with us. If you want to be a part of my program at all, we have a full video sales letter for you guys to take a look at. If you want to see it, just go to 7figuremsp.com on the web. We have a full 45-minute strategy call. Actifile comes with what we do. So it's a great product, and we love it. Guy, thanks so much for being with us today. You did a great job. I know you were nervous, and it was super fun. It was good to see you. You have a great night. Go have that beer we talked about. And,
I will.
All right. You guys have a great day. We'll see you next week, Tuesday, with another interview. We'll see you guys. Have a great day. Keep crushing it. This is Chris Wiser. Take care.